Every massive ship on Earth depends on one critical safety system, the anchor. These enormous vessels can remain perfectly still in open water, even while facing powerful winds and ocean currents. Entire floating cities are held in place by what looks like a tiny metal hook compared to the size of the ship. But here's something most people don't know. It's not actually the anchor alone that holds the ship in place. In fact, if you simply dropped an anchor into the deep ocean, it would do almost nothing. And if you pulled it the wrong way, you could even damage your own ship. So how do captains know the exact place to drop the anchor? How much chain do they need to release? And how can they lift a 20-ton anchor buried deep in the seabed? In today's video, we'll answer these questions and uncover the incredible engineering behind ship anchors. Stay with me until the end. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. To understand how ship anchoring works, you first need to know that it's not only the anchor holding the vessel still. The real secret lies in the enormous steel chain attached to it. And this is no ordinary chain. A single link from a cruise ship anchor chain can weigh over 130 kilograms, and the full chain may contain more than 180 links and stretch over 300 meters in length. A large cruise ship anchor itself can weigh between 15 and 20 tons, but the chain attached to it is often much heavier, weighing anywhere from 60 to 120 tons. That massive weight is the hidden weapon of anchoring. When a captain anchors a ship, they don't simply drop the anchor straight to the seabed. Instead, they release a huge length of heavy chain across the ocean floor. This creates a curve called a catenary, which absorbs the forces generated by waves, wind, and currents. Part of the chain settles into the mud and acts like a giant shock absorber. When waves push the ship backward, they must first lift tons of steel chain off the seabed before they can even begin pulling the anchor. By the time the pulling force finally reaches the anchor, it is almost completely horizontal. This causes the anchor to dig even deeper into the seabed instead of being ripped out. Interestingly, ships rarely release all of their chain. Captains use a simple rule called scope, which determines how much chain should be deployed based on water depth. Typically, ships release chain equal to 5 to 7 times the depth of the water. So, in a location that is 20 meters deep, the crew may release between 100 and 140 meters of chain. In rough seas or strong winds, that ratio may increase even further to ensure the anchor remains secure. But what happens in the deep ocean? If a ship breaks down in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, could it simply drop anchor? In most cases, no. Commercial ships can usually only anchor in relatively shallow water, generally less than 100 to 200 meters deep. The deeper the water, the more chain would be required to keep the anchor functioning properly. In the open ocean, where depths can exceed 3 kilometers, the amount of chain needed would be enormous. The weight of all that steel hanging almost vertically could damage the anchor windlass, the machine responsible for controlling the chain, or place dangerous stress on the ship itself. That's why ships in deep water normally drift while waiting for assistance. Specialized vessels such as research ships and drilling platforms use a different system called dynamic positioning. In this system, computers automatically control multiple thrusters around the ship, constantly adjusting its position so it can remain almost perfectly stationary without any anchor touching the seabed. When approaching shallow waters, officers check the depth using nautical charts and computer systems to calculate the correct amount of chain needed. But how do sailors actually measure how much chain has already been released? For that, ships use a very old maritime measurement system. The anchor chain is divided into standardized sections called shackles, also known as shots. Each shackle measures about 27.5 meters, or 90 feet, and the sections are connected by specially marked links. These connecting links are painted in bright colors like white or red to make them easy to identify. As the chain runs through the hawse pipe, an officer stationed at the bow watches the markings and counts how many shackles have passed. He then reports the information to the bridge by radio. If 3 shackles are in the water, that means approximately 83 meters of chain have been released. This tells the captain how much weight is resting on the seabed and whether the catenary curve is sufficient to keep the ship safely anchored. When the anchor first reaches the seabed, it still isn't holding the ship. At that moment, it simply rests on the bottom, often lying on its side. To make the anchor work, the ship must slowly continue moving backward. This movement causes the chain to pull the anchor horizontally across the seabed. As this happens, the geometry of the anchor forces it to rotate into the correct position. Its flukes, the wide arms at the end, tilt downward and begin digging into the seabed. In sand or mud, the anchor may bury itself deeper and deeper as the pulling force increases. In some cases, it can disappear completely beneath the sediment. The harder the ship tries to move, the deeper the anchor digs, creating enormous resistance. That is how a single anchor can hold a ship weighing hundreds of thousands of tons. But eventually, every ship must continue its journey. And that means pulling the anchor back up from the seabed. This is where the anchor windlass comes into action, a massive machine installed at the front of the ship. The windlass slowly pulls the enormous steel chain back on board. As it retrieves the shackles, the chain that was lying across the seabed begins lifting upward again. For a while, the anchor remains buried, resisting the pull. But as the ship slowly moves toward the anchor's location, the pulling angle changes. The force that was once dragging the anchor horizontally gradually begins pulling upward. And that's the moment the anchor finally breaks free from the seabed. Once released from the sediment, the anchor is lifted out of the water and guided back into its housing at the bow of the ship, where it remains secured until needed again. Thank you for watching until the end. If you want to keep learning, click one of the recommended videos appearing on your screen right now.